Welcome to Typecasting, where we're typing our favorite fictional characters on the Enneagram and taking on pop culture by the numbers.
Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, welcome to season 2.
That is your host, Lucas Graydon, who would be the diamond of the season.
The diamond of the season. And that's your co-host, Murjanatu, who I cannot wait to see in the original Broadway cast of Bridgerton, the musical.
Oh, I love that. Lucas, it is so good to be here on the mic with you right now.
I know that we talk literally every single day, but this is just already bringing back so many fond memories. Like, I'm so excited to be back behind the mic.
Absolutely. And welcome everyone to season 2 of Typecasting. We have been working around the clock. You know, all of our calls are very serious to plan out exactly what we want for this podcast.
It is new year, new us, and I'm so excited.
I'm more excited. Lucas, tell us what we're talking about today.
Yes, so some of you may have joined us for last season, and we were all in on the Marvel movies. This season, we are shaking things up. It's going to be a little bit different week to week. And when we were sitting down and discussing all the different properties and TV shows and movies that we could discuss in season 2, this premiere was a no-brainer. We have to talk about Bridgerton because everybody is talking about Bridgerton.
It is the talk of the town. If Lady Whistledown were here, right now, obviously it would be where her pen was going, pen and quill.
She may be here. We don't know. Actually,
we don't know.
We do know who Lady Whistledown is, and I think now is as good a time as ever to remind all of our lovely listeners that this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you have not seen all of season 1 of Bridgerton, I don't think we'll have reason to talk about Lady Whistledown's true identity on this episode, but you might want to get caught up before you listen to the rest of this ep.
And also, just as we're calling that out, just another disclaimer is that we're definitely not Enneagram professionals, although we like to think we are, and we are just having fun, and we only do this with characters, and we're having a great time. And listen to season 1 if you want to hear more about our methods here.
Yes, the 4 main rules here at Typecasting, those 4 rules are still the same. We are not experts, and we are not here to type anybody real. We're just here for the fictional characters, for the fun of it.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of characters, Lucas, who are we talking about first?
Oh, it's been so long since you asked me that. I'm so glad you asked. We are talking about the real diamond of the season, Daphne Bridgerton. Or, as we know, after she gets married, wedding bells are ringing, she is also known as the Duchess of Hastings. She is the eldest of the Bridgerton girls, and she's the only Bridgerton child to be married so far, even though she has 3 older brothers. So some of those siblings need to get on top of things.
You know what, though? They're probably like 20. Like, it's a different world.
How old is she? Like 17?
Probably. There's that better be the answer for some of these things that we'll talk about soon.
So, Murjanatu, I'm so excited to ask you this question. It feels like it's been forever. What do you think Daphne's Enneagram type is?
Wow. So our protagonist, our lovely, sweet Daphne, has a lot going on. I think one of the things that's really cool about this, and like we were talking about earlier, she's super young. So this movie is a romance. It's also like a coming of age. She's learning a lot about how the world works, a lot about intimacy, keeping it PG,
Yes.
and I just think that there is so much movement and character development, and we're along for the ride. So when I was really like sitting down and thinking through this, I was like, I think she spends a lot of her time stressed out, and kind of because of just the nature of what's going on in her world. But she is the diamond of the season. She's worked really hard to be this incredible woman that anyone would want to marry. And she is actually super successful at it. but she's also very genuine to who she wants to be and kind of sees through the cracks of her own society. Because of all of these things, I know usually we don't do it this way. I'm going to go full in and say I believe she's a 3-wing 4. So she knows how to win the room. She's a total woo, winning others over. And she is lovely and charming and knows what to do, but also she fights this need to be genuine and true, and obviously she is a true romantic at heart.
Okay. I like it. I always have to just pause for a second and process everything, see where it lines up with what I am thinking. So actually, I'm really glad you said that. So I'm going to start with mine now. When I was thinking about Daphne, and it's funny, I know you said we don't normally even jump in with the wings right away, but I also had a wing written down for her. If I had to think of 3 words that describe Daphne, and these are just the 3 that kind of came out as I was writing my notes, they were prim, proper, and perfect. I think that Daphne, as the eldest, she feels that responsibility and she shoulders that responsibility really well. She knows the rules of society and she has learned to operate inside of those lines in a way that she commands the room and she knows how the system works. And I think that we actually see the image of how well Daphne performs those roles and things like that reflected in Eloise, because Eloise mentions it's a good thing that you're so perfect so that I don't have to be.
I suppose I should thank you.
Whatever for?
For being so perfect. So I do not have to be.
And so that idea of being perfect, of doing the right thing and kind of playing within the lines and things like that, living the right way, quote unquote, is actually what drew me towards the type 1. And I think for me, the other scene that really stood out when I was like, you know what? And we've mentioned this before. I think if you go back and check out our crash course, we even say, if you need to get things done, you go to a 1. When Colin and Marina are embroiled in scandal right after Daphne and the Duke find themselves embroiled in a fight, she's like, I have to go home. I have to be with my family. I have to fix things. The way that she shows up, she takes command, she takes charge, and she tells them exactly what they're going to be doing. She is saying, I'm going to be the chaperone of this conversation. This is what we're going to do, and we are going to fix this. She kind of reminds me of Olivia Pope in the way that she's like, oh, there's a scandal. I'm here to get things done and get things fixed. And that, to me, that commanding presence and that ability to really just like take control and get things back to where they need to be really felt like a 1 in their power to me.
It's
and so I had her.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
So I'll just wrap things up and then I want to hear what you have to say. So I had her in a 1 wing 2 because I did see that heart and I saw that feeling triad, the need and the desire to help people and to care for people. So I had her as a 1 wing 2. I think you make a good argument for the 3 wing 4. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that was definitely my next choice, like easily. The things that stopped me were the things that she was so perfect at are so others centered in how she shows up, right? So less so being a perfectionist in the tiny details of things and more so the big picture. And we talked about this a lot. I think a lot of people who are either 1s or 3s when they're first understanding the Enneagram aren't really sure where they lie, because I think both of them kind of think of themselves as perfectionists. They are very success driven, and it's hard because we kind of get placed right in the middle of her story as a person, right? She's already developed. The first time we're meeting her, we understand that she is the cream of the crop of the town for that season, right? For marriages and proposals. So it's kind of hard because we can't really see her motivations. I totally hear you with her brother, but I also think that's such a 3 thing to be image conscious and to be aware of what's going on, how much her feelings were hurt when the village people were upset with her because she didn't pick the correct peg. And she was conscious.
She picked all the pigs.
She didn't pick a pig, and everyone was mad at her. So I think of that and how she was very conscious of how people think of her from what will the help think? Is what she says.
Mm-hmm.
She's so image conscious. And I do think that is more of the fact that, like, I do think she's perfect, but I think it's because she's charming and she's perfect. I don't necessarily think it's because she does everything correctly. So I still feel pretty strongly that she's a 3. I also think she is a wing 4 rather than a 2, because we don't really see her bending over backwards for anyone through the whole series. She is, everything she does, she understands the weight and gravity of the situation and of other people's trauma, as we'll talk about with the Duke of Hastings, and understands that. And I think she's more doing things because she has such empathy and understands the situation for her family, less so than for just like the two desire to be helpful and to be present. What do you think?
I agree. And I actually, there was a piece in my note taking in my research that stood out to me when she just talks about how frustrated she is and how tired she is of pretending.
I am tired of pretending. And I cannot continue acting as if I do not love you. Because I do. I love all of you. Even the parts that you believe are too dark and too shameful. Every scar, every flaw, every imperfection. I love you.
And I think that desire to be authentic and to be able to love authentically and to be herself authentically points to both that 3 and that wing 4, because those, I think that you see in a lot of type 3s, they are so good at flitting around a crowd and mirroring everyone around them and becoming whoever the people around them need them to be the most charming and the most charismatic, that they lose a sense of themselves, and they're searching for that sense of themselves and who they are inside, because they only know who they are in relation to other people and who they're kind of reflecting back at them. I'm getting Taylor Swift's mirror ball stuck in my head. Reflecting people back at themselves to keep them entertained and to keep them happy. And so I definitely saw that type 3 in that scene and in that desire. And I think similarly, and especially in that 4 and in that 4 wing, that need to be authentic and to be true to yourself, I can really see that coming in, bridging that gap between the 3 and the 4 as well. So I think I agree with you. I think I'm sold.
Yay! I'm so happy that we aligned, and that is so great. Well, awesome. I am now going to take this opportunity to talk about, although technically Daphne is the protagonist of the story and like that world, everyone's favorite character. Everyone.
Oh, bold assertion. Maybe everybody's favorite character to look at. I am with you there.
That's what I kind of meant.
Respectfully. I am looking
this
respectfully.
Isn't a visual medium. But that is what I meant. Yeah, so I want to talk about Simon Basset, the Duke of Hastings. And he obviously is a duke. He is presiding over, actually, I don't know, Hastings, I assume. I don't want to just say that.
Literally,
like the land of Hastings.
I have no clue. I was trying to figure out how that worked. I was like, is there? Is it a village? Is it
again,
a serfdom?
we're not professionals, but I think it's a little village, and he like collects the people's goods and gives them to the queen. So let's go with that. Again, not professionals, and I love it for us. Okay. And his major plot point is that he decides from a pretty young age that he is never going to get married and absolutely never going to have kids. So he and Daphne kind of fall in love, playing this charade for everyone that they're going to fall in love, and
it's
they are in love to kind of make,
It's very To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
All the fake dating romance, but like before dating was a thing.
I was thinking about this tonight before we started recording. I was like, I've never seen two people pretend to be in love and then not actually fall in love. And
It's a
then I was
trope.
trying to figure out how I can find somebody to pretend to be in love with me long enough to actually fall in love with me. I was like, where do I sign up? Like, this
Well,
happens so
Lucas,
much.
it will only take a minute. It will only take a minute to actually fall in love with you.
Aw, thank you.
And so we learn a lot about the Duke of Hastings' childhood and who he is as a person. And so I'm so excited because I think, unlike Daphne, we get a lot of backstory for the Duke of Hastings and who he is as a person. And he ends up falling madly in love with Daphne. And I don't know if they're quite couple goals, but they're definitely a couple. So, Lucas, tell me.
I have Burn for You stuck in my head now.
Oh,
Shout out
it's a
to the
great
TikTok
song, but it has
Bridgerton
nothing
musical.
Exactly. So, Lucas, why don't you tell me what you think about the Duke of Hastings, Simon, and what his Enneagram type would be?
Oh my goodness. My thoughts about Simon, I have a lot of them. You know, because you binged the show before me and I could not stop texting you about everything that was happening. But to keep us on brand, to stay here with the Enneagram, I have a couple different thoughts for Simon, but I am pretty confident. I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, I had 3 words that came to mind right away for Simon. They were bold, passionate, and vengeful. And when he talks about in that iconic scene where he says that he burns for Daphne, and I think we see a lot of emotion from him, which for somebody who's super masculine and commanding and in charge, I think sometimes that is maybe surprising. But to me, it really pointed towards that type 8. And I know we've talked in the past, we talked last season with a couple characters about how type 8s can sometimes get fixated on vengeance or revenge. And Simon's inability, and this is all with love for my type 8s, not as much love for Simon because, oh, this man, he gets me aggravated. But his insistence to his vow that he made to his father when his father was dying, that he's never going to have kids and never going to carry on that name. He lets that commitment and that choice and that revenge and vengeance come in between all of his relationships and his entire future. I love when Daphne asks him, or tells him, because I can't remember which it was, you hate your father more than you could ever love me. And I think that we see Simon really trapped by, and then he learns to overcome that need for revenge and vengeance. And I think that does point to the type 8, but also he has, I think, a lot of those beautiful qualities of the type 8. As I mentioned, he is bold and passionate and emotional in some really great ways. And he has that innate power. We talked a lot about 8s and power last season too, but I see him as an 8. I have no idea about the wing, but before we get into wings, let me know, what do you think? Where do you think he is?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. And I think those were some amazing points. I felt similarly. And I think we're kind of, as the podcast expands, we're seeing, or we have some similar numbers that we kind of always like get stuck between. And mine here was, I thought about the 8, but I also thought about the 1, right? And so
me too.
I think, yeah, because I think the thing that was playing out in my mind was he more dedicated and vengeful? Like, my father will never get to be, or my family name will never go to the next generation? Or was it him keeping his word? He is really dedicated to his word and honor. And I thought that was very indicative of a type 1, how he is saying, I was ready to take my life that day. I was going to die for your honor. I understood what I did wrong. I made a vow to my father, and that is what I am going to be doing for the rest of my life. And he truly believed that's what he was going to do until he was in a very sticky situation. And so I really see 1 in him, where I think also he has a little bit of a trickier time with his emotions than 8s tend to. I think of how long he went without speaking to Daphne on during their engagement that they were trying to expedite, and how beautifully his words were to Queen Charlotte, but he couldn't quite say that to Daphne. and how long it took him to say he burns for Daphne. I think 8s, when they're very passionate, it's easy. These emotions roll off of who they are. They can't keep them in. That's one of the most beautiful things about the 8s. But for him, he took a very long time to be able to say those things, and they were only when they were absolutely necessary, when one in front of the queen. And Daphne for the first time was like, oh, he does like me. I wasn't really sure.
Right.
But then he was quiet again for a while. And I think all of these things were upholding his honor. So I thought about the 8, but then I actually went between the 1 and the 6 because he's just so loyal. But ultimately, I thought it made sense for him to be in the 1. And I think he actually, because of his childhood where he was also like bullied and abused for so long, it was essential for him to be perfect. So it made so much sense that he, after hearing such scorn from his father, decided that, or like would take on those character traits.
Yes,
what do you
the
think?
quote, I agree. 1 was the other number that I had written down, and the quote that I had written down that pointed me in this way, and that I think you were just about to that you were just speaking to really beautifully, is when Daphne and Simon host their big event and it's raining and they're in the middle of the courtyard and she professes her love for him. She talks about his relationship with his father and she says, he made you believe that you needed to be without fault to be loved.
Daphne.
Just because something is not perfect does not make it any less worthy of love. Your father made you believe otherwise. He made you believe that you needed to be without fault in order to be loved, but he was wrong. Should you need any proof of the matter, then look just here.
And the way that she recognizes that pain in him, and then she tells him she loves every part of him. She loves the darkness and she loves the scars, is such a beautiful message of healing for those type 1s who feel like they have to be without fault to be loved. You do not have to be without fault to be loved. And I think that it's such a beautiful message of transformation and of healing for the type 1. It reminds me, because I am getting a little emotional. It reminds me of our the hidden episode of Typecasting, our very first test run, when you and I were getting emotional over Frozen. But I think that this is one of my favorite things about looking at the Enneagram in fictional characters, is like finding those points of truth and transformation and those pockets of healing for those characters and learning how to apply that to our own Enneagram types. And so I think that whole scene speaks to, and what you were just talking to speaks to, the type 1 in a really beautiful way. And I'm totally with you. You've 100% convinced me. I love it.
I love it too. Oh, I wish I could just give him a hug though.
I know. I mean, he got some hugs. I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. His physical touch love language is fine. All right, Lucas, who's next?
Okay, I am interested to see where this conversation goes. Our final character today is Queen Charlotte, Queen of England in the year of 1813. She is not only the head of the country, but the head of the social scene, which is why she gets a little upset when Lady Whistledown comes in and starts taking over that place of authority and knowledge. And so she is on a mission throughout the season to discover who Lady Whistledown is. She and Eloise team up for a little bit because the queen is so desperate to find out who Lady Whistledown is, what she knows, and to hold her accountable. What I really find interesting about the queen's character and arc as we go through the season is that she puts on a beautiful face of strength and elegance in front of the people, but we see that she has some real pain in her own life and in her own marriage with her husband, the king, who is struggling with some of his own health problems throughout the season. So I found that duality of the character really interesting, and I want to hear where you think she falls on the Enneagram.
I really admire Queen Charlotte. I think there's so much going on in this series, and that's like a lot of emotions, especially to do with race. But it was really cool to see like a queen that kind of looked like me. Like she kind of has even like my almond eyes and the light brown skin and her curly hair. I was just like, it was so fun to see her. So I will say this might have impacted how I thought her Enneagram showed up.
Oh my goodness. I am fascinated to see this argument. Okay.
Because I think she's a 4. I think she's a very unhealthy 4. She's living for the tea. She's like the most ornate person around. She's having literal gymnastics going on around her just because she can. She's totally in the drama. And I do think she's a sucker for the romantics. She just like wants to see love matches pop up here and around. And because she's in an unhealthy place in her own life and relationship, I think we're seeing a kind of malicious side of her. And I don't think that's how she normally is. That's at least what I like to think. So the thing that kind of sealed the deal for me was the fact that she was absolutely not for Simon and Daphne because of the fact that she wanted Daphne to be with her nephew, the prince. And then when Simon just pled his case, said he was in love, and even though she knew there was something deeper going on, that's when she broke. And I was like, she does have feelings. She's just like not in a good place right now. I think like it's hard because I think her character is very much just like, oh, she's a queen, do whatever queens would do. Mm-hmm. But like me trying to breathe life into her.
Okay.
And just like how ornate. And I think like, I do think she's like loves the drama and like in the unhealthy way us 4s sometimes tend to get addicted to the melodramatics, and there are a lot of really hurtful things happening in her life. Oh my gosh, did I just hear you tisk?
Dramatic? What?
But I think when we see like what's actually happening in her life and how she's really hurting, I mean, she's having a hard time, and she's being overly genuine to the fact that like she's not hiding who she is. So I think she might have some foreigner, but I'm happy to be corrected because I was like, maybe it's just like me having fun in my head.
Okay. I am more convinced by your argument than I anticipated, so I'm excited to see where we land. I did not have her as a 4. I'm not sure it really crossed my mind, but I will say I had a hard time getting a grip on her as a character. And I think that part of that is because of the plot and the narrative. She, a lot of times, is an obstacle more than she is a character in her own right. And I'm glad that we do get to see some of those glimpses behind the curtain and more of her everyday life. But that nature of only seeing somebody when they're in public, when they've put their best face on, when they are ready to be seen. You only see the queen when she wants to be seen. Reminded me actually of a tactic of another number on the Enneagram, which is the type 3. So I know we've talked about the type 3s a little bit with Daphne, but I see some similarities in the way that Daphne and the queen know how to run the social season. And the queen especially wants to be at the top of the social seasons. She needs to appear successful. And for me, some of the notes that I wrote down about her, I wrote that she wants to be respected, revered, and regarded as right. She needs to be right in a way that I think is really interesting throughout the season. We see her, she wants to, Daphne may be embroiled in scandal at the very beginning. The queen she moves on to Marina because she has picked Daphne, and she has so much writing on this pick. When she picks the diamond of the season, she needs to be right, and she needs to kind of appear, and just the way that she loves the appearances and the social aspect of it all. I really saw that type 3, the way that type 3s often, and the thing about the Enneagram is every single type is putting on a mask in one way or another, but 3s often have an arsenal of masks. They're really good at blending into a lot of different things, and 3s are good at keeping people at arm's length, even if you don't realize that they are, in a way that I think the queen is good at. So I saw the type 3.
That's a good point.
I could be convinced maybe of the type 4, but I do think that she probably falls in between those two somewhere.
I do think you convinced me, and I think she's a 3 weighing 4.
Okay.
I think we might have seen a little more empathy a little earlier on if she was a 4.
Yeah.
And I totally, I'm aligned.
Wow. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. This just feels so nice to be able to talk about this again and with something so new and fresh.
Yes, we will be digging into some oldies, some goodies, some classics, but I mean, how could we not be talking about Bridgerton right now? Because we've had to even postpone some of our conversations because it's like, save it for the pod. We only have a couple more weeks. Save it for the pod. So it's good to actually like sit down and talk about Bridgerton. We have a couple more Bridgerton characters coming up next week that I'm really excited about.
Yes, Lucas, I am so excited for next week when we are going to be covering some other people in the Bridgerton world. We're going to be talking about the icon herself, Eloise Bridgerton.
Yes.
I know. And then some of our pals from across the street, Marina, who we were just talking about, gave a little sneak peek to that. And then additionally, our favorite, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I speak about this when I say we love Penelope Featherington.
I do love Pen. And hey, we may even get to talk about Lady Whistledown next week. I don't know. All right, Murjanatu, we did it. We are here in season 2. Brand new things cooking up. Can't wait for next week. You just named some of my favorite characters from Bridgerton. And listen, y'all, when Bridgerton season 2 comes out, we're going to have a whole hour to talk about Benedict. But that is a story for another day.
That is a story for another day. As Lady Whistledown would say, cheerio.
Cheerio. Thank you for listening to Typecasting. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at TypecastingPod, where you can vote in our weekly polls. Leave a review and be sure to join us next week when we take on more pop culture by the numbers.